Greetings, welcome back to Moto Matters. Today we're working on the 1990 project, rebuilding the rear shock. First thing we have to do, take the spring off, which we've already done. We've already got a video teaching how to do that, so check that out over here. Now if you got the spring off, you want to come down here to the Schrader valve. And you want to let all the nitrogen out. Notice I said nitrogen, not air. Never ever put air in your shock. Everyone sees a Schrader valve and think, oh, that's how I air up the tires of my car. Psh, no. Air has way too low of a flash point, and as the shock goes up and down hundreds of thousands of times while you're riding, it builds up heat. So if you put air in it, what you've essentially done is put a missile under your butt, just waiting for it to explode and launch forward. That's why nitrogen goes in there. Nitrogen is a much more consistent gas, so it doesn't heat up as much, won't fade as much. So once you let the nitrogen out, then you can push this down. And by push down, I mean get pretty aggressive. And here, just popping the snap ring right out of the way. Here I am with a valve stem puller tool to help cheat and get the reservoir out. And then you want to be careful not to puncture or destroy. And now let's dump some 30-year-old crud. That is some nasty oil right there. And make sure we pump it all out. Get rid of all that disgusting stuff. Now we're going to start getting the seal out. Use a punch, gently drive the bottom plug out, which will then reveal our seal head. So I'm just using a little cheat to get that out of my way. Yep, that seal is definitely blown. This guy needs rebuilt. So you can pull the other snap ring to get the seal head out. And just like before, we've got to push it down. We're going to get the snap ring out, get the seal head out, and get everything all cleaned up just the way it's supposed to be. Some more of that nasty 30-year oil. Got a little brake cleaner here, just cleaning out the reservoir body. Here we are, working on the push rod, taking the nut off. Very careful. Pay attention to the order in which you take things off. All those washers there, followed by the shims. That's the valving. Do not change the order of those washers. That affects how the shock works. You can see I take it off as a full stack and set it down as a full stack. Ways are easier than individually. Here we have our piston. We gotta do a little clean up work to the threads first, because the piston fits that tight. Again, more shims. I'm making sure, because I lost one, to get them all in the right order, because we do not want to affect the valving of the shock. Here I am just running a die down to clean up the threads. Pulling the valve body off right now, or the seal body. And now the spacers. So everything is all cleaned up. Here I am taping very lightly the end of the threads, and I'll do around the next ridge so we don't end up tearing up our seal head when we get to that point. But here is the wonderful new shock bumper, which it did not have one at all. I want to make sure we get plenty of fluid on that seal inside. And just one strip around, very as thin as possible. And now we just go back on in reverse order. Again, be very careful not to get any of those shims out of order. Lastly, to go on is the nut. You want to make sure there's a brand new nut because the previous one was damaged with the threads. And I used a very, very little amount of thread locker. Here, you'll see it comes with a washer, a special lock washer. That gets destroyed. You don't reuse it. You don't replace it, as the manual points out here. Instead, what you do is you pin it. So you take a punch and you hit between the nut and the push rod and 2 or 3 spots to bend it, the metals together, so that way it can't work its way loose. It's real important to torque this to spec and get it pinned down. Time to start putting her back together, and here I am, playing in the oil. I say playing because I like to watch it go from one side to the other, filling up the entire cavity completely. We want to make sure there's absolutely no air in this. So that's why it's full. I'm making a giant mess. I'm starting by putting the bladder back in first. You can do it either way, actually, as long as you make sure you bleed all the air out when you're done. Here I am, topping it off completely to put the push rod in. And again, making a giant oil mess, trying to get as much air out and make sure we're only oil in the entire cavity. And this right here is the bleed valve, the drain. So I'm just going to pull it out to bleed out any air there possibly would be in this. You can also do this through the body valve adjuster. You can pull it out and when you service that. So bleeding out a little fluid, a little air to get the seal head down far enough to get that snap ring back into place. Again, you're just getting things up out of the way so you can pop that snap ring down where she needs to go. And now we're going to bleed out any air. We've got our verticals, that way the air bubbles float to the top. Gonna pump the stroke a few times, run the shock push rod in and out to get any air out of it there possibly is. Now I'm just going to show you a little of this because it gets kind of boring. But I did this quite a bit several times, rotating the shock at several different directions to try and get the air bubbles out. You want to make sure you definitely pull the push rod all the way out to get it seated. And here we are, putting the cap back into place. So that way we can wrap this project up and be done with it. Spring back on, lockers in place, tighten it up, get the tension back on the spring. Okay, now the only thing left to do is charge it with nitrogen. I don't have nitrogen here, but thankfully my local shop does. So shout out to M Squared Synthetics and Performance. So we'll be on our way in soon to get this charged. I believe 142 pounds, 150. It's kind of where most shocks are. But just check your manual for the right PSI. Get her in there, and we're ready to go. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe.